Thank you very much. We are reading today from text 34 in the 14th chapter of Canto 7. If we can get that on the board.
So we are reading from 34 to 42 and focusing on 39.
Correct. Yeah. So we can begin.
34, text 34. O King of the earth, it has been decided by expert learned scholars that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in whom all that is moving or non-moving within this universe is resting and from whom everything is coming, is the best person to whom everything must be.
O King Yudhishthira, the demigods, many great sages and saints, including even the 4 sons of Lord Brahma, and I myself were present at the Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. But when there was a question of who should be the first person worshipped, everyone decided upon Lord Krishna, the Supreme Person.
The entire universe, which is full of living entities, is like a tree whose root is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Achyut, Krishna. Therefore, simply by worshipping Lord Krishna, one can worship all living entities.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead has created many residential places like the bodies of human beings, animals, birds, saints, and demigods. In all of these innumerable bodily forms, the Lord resides with the living being as Paramatma. Thus he is known as the Purusha-avatar.
O King Yudhishthira, the super soul in every body gives intelligence to the individual soul according to its capacity for understanding. Therefore, the super soul is the chief within the body. The super soul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on.
My dear King, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia.
Sometimes a neophyte devotee offers all the paraphernalia for worshipping the Lord, and he factually worships the Lord as a deity. But because he is envious of the authorized devotees of Lord Vishnu, the Lord is never satisfied with his devotional service.
My dear King, of all persons, a qualified Brahmana must be accepted as the best within this material world, because such a Brahmana, by practicing austerity, Vedic studies, and satisfaction, becomes the counterpart body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
My dear King Yudhishthira, the Brahmanas, especially those engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord throughout the entire world, are recognized and worshipped by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the heart and soul of all creation. The Brahmanas, by their preaching, sanctify the 3 worlds with the dust of their lotus feet, and thus they are worshipable even for Krishna.
Thank you very much. So we're focusing on text 39. Please repeat after me. Drishtva tesham mito nrinam avagyanatmatam nripa Dretadishu hariracha Kriyayaika vibhikrita Drishtva tesham mito nrinam avagyanatmatam nripa Dretadishu hariracha Kriyayaika vibhikrita Drishtva tesham mito nrinam avagyanatmatam nripa Tretadishu hariracha Kriyayaika vibhikrita
Drishtva tesham mito nrinam
Avagyanatmatam ripa.
Avagyanatmatam
Okay. Drishtva, after practically seeing, Tesham, among the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, Mitaha, mutually, Nrinam, of the human society, Avagyana, Atmatam, the mutually disrespectful behavior, Nripa, O king, Treta Adishu, beginning from Treta Yuga, Hare, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Archa, the deity worship in the temple, Kriyayai, for the purpose of introducing the method of worship, Kavibhihi, by learned persons, Krita, has been done. Translation: My dear king, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia. Purport. Maybe we'll take turns. Yes.
As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 12 canto, 3rd chapter, 52 verse, Kriteya Dhyayatu Vishnu Tretayam Yajato Mabhe Dvapare Paricharyayam Kalau Tadari Krishna. Whatever result one obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapar Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, one can also obtain in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In Satya Yuga, every person was spiritually advanced and there was no envy between great personalities. Gradually, however, because of material contamination, with the advance of the ages, disrespectful dealings appeared even among Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. Actually, an advanced Vaishnava is to be respected more than Vishnu. As stated in the Padma Puran, Aradhanam Sarvesha Vishnu Aradhana Param. Of all the kinds of worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. Tasmat Parataranam Devi Tadiyana Smarat Charanam. And recommended more than worship of Vishnu is worship of the Vishnu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Formerly, all activities were performed in connection with Vishnu. But after Satya Yuga, there were symptoms of disrespectful dealings among the Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that a Vaishnava is he who has helped others become Vaishnavas. An example of one who has converted many others into Vaishnavas is Narada Muni. A powerful Vaishnava who has converted others into Vaishnavas is to be worshipped, but because of material contamination, sometimes such an exalted Vaishnava is disrespected by other minor Vaishnavas. When great saintly persons saw this contamination, they introduced worship of the deity in the temple. This began in Treta Yuga and was especially prominent in Dwapar Yuga, Dvapare Parichayayam. But in Kali Yuga, worship of the deity is being neglected. Therefore, chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is more powerful than deity worship. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu set a practical example in that he did not establish any temples or deities, but he profusely introduced the Sankirtana movement. Therefore, Krishna consciousness preachers should give more stress to the Sankirtana movement, especially by distributing transcendental literature more and more. This helps the Sankirtana movement. Whenever there is a possibility to worship the deity, we may establish many centers. But generally, we should give more stress to the distribution of transcendental literature, for this will be more effective in converting people to Krishna consciousness.
Go ahead.
It said in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:2-47, Archayam eva hare pujam nirashadhare a person who is very faithfully engaged in the worship of the deity in the temple but does not know how to behave toward devotees or people in general is called Prakrita Bhakta or Kanishka Adhikari. A Prakrita devotee or neophyte devotee is still on the material platform. He certainly engages in worshipping the deity, but he cannot appreciate the activities of a pure devotee. It has actually been seen that even an authorized devotee who is engaged in the service of the Lord by preaching the mission of Krishna consciousness is sometimes criticized by neophyte devotees. Such neophytes are described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sarva Prani Sanmana Samarthanam Avadnyana Spardhagimatam Tu Bhagvat Pratimaiva Patram Itya Aha. For those who cannot properly appreciate the activities of authorized devotees, deity worship is the only way for spiritual advancement. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita under 711, it is clearly said, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tara Parvartana. Without being authorized by Krishna, we cannot preach the holy name of the Lord throughout the entire world. Nevertheless, a devotee who does so is criticized by neophyte devotees, Kanishta Adhikaris, who are on the lower stages of devotional service. For them, deity worship is strongly recommended.
Thank you. So, we see here, deity worship was established long ago, interestingly mentioned in Treta Yuga. But as we know, the process of Treta Yuga was sacrifice, yajna, and in Dwapar Yuga was deity worship. This was emphasized as the path of attaining perfection. In this Kali Yuga, that process is Harinam Sankirtan, like we were all just doing. Actually, we were just doing both of those activities in the temple, deity worship and Sankirtan. So then the question may be, if Sankirtan is sufficient, why do we have deity worship? Why did our acharyas establish temples? Starting with the 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan, they established 7 prominent temples there, which are still there today. And therefore they participated in deity worship. In fact, they all had personal deities, very beautiful deities. You can still see in Vrindavan and Jaipur. And then coming down after a few centuries, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established 64 mats or temples around India. And then Srila Prabhupada established 108 temples. And still temples are being expanded all over the world. Now we have hundreds and hundreds of temples in this Krishna consciousness movement. Just within ISKCON, what to speak, outside even within the greater Gaudiya community. So many temples are being built and deities are being worshipped. Almost in every home, the devotees have personal deities and are participating in this form of devotional service, archana. So what is the need of this if chanting the holy name is sufficient? Well, chanting the holy name is sufficient so long as we can chant purely. We know there are different stages of chanting, right? Does everyone know the 3 levels of chanting?
I don't know.
Namabhas is one.
Shuddhanam.
Shuddhanam, yes. No, there's one more before that. Namaparad. So chanting offensively, but committing, the 10 offenses, right? I won't ask to recite all of them, but generally we read them every morning as a reminder so that we can consciously avoid these offenses, beginning with Vaishnava Aparad. This is the greatest Nam Aparad. Because the Nam is Krishna. Krishna is non-different from his name. His name, form, qualities, pastimes, it's all absolute. So when Krishna's devotees are offended, then Krishna himself will withdraw his mercy. This he does not appreciate at all. So there's Namaparad, chanting offensively. Then there's Namabhas, which is chanting without offense, but not purely. This is the middling stage. And then there is Shuddhanam, pure chanting. So with Namaparad, you can fulfill all your material desires. With Namabhas, you can attain liberation. And with Shuddhanam only, you can attain Krishna Prema. So if you can chant Shuddhanam, then chanting the holy name is sufficient. And we see that many great devotees throughout history, especially in the days of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many great devotees who simply took shelter of the holy name, such as Namacharya Haridas Thakur. And these great Mahabhagavat devotees, they're chanting on the level of Shuddhanam. They're chanting purely with love. So therefore we don't see that they're engaging, we don't hear that Haridas Thakur was engaged in deity worship. And we also don't see that he participated in the Varnashram system. In fact, he wasn't even allowed in the temple in Jagannath Puri, what to speak of worshipping the deity. He wasn't allowed even to see Jagannath, unless Jagannath came out of the temple on Ratha Yatra. So if one is chanting purely, this is sufficient. However, generally speaking, as most of us are coming from not the most pious background, I'm speaking about myself, we may not be able to chant on such a pure level. Therefore, progress will be very slow. Progress will be there. The holy name is always purifying. Cheto darpana marjanam, right? It will purify the heart of all of our anarthas, but to the degree that we can chant sincerely, purely, without offense, to that degree it's more effective. So then, deity worship, or the whole process of Pancharatra, which is everything surrounding the deities, like in this temple, all we do is follow the Pancharatric system, basically following Narada Pancharatra, the Shastras on Pancharatric principles. They're all surrounding deity worship. Waking up early, taking a bath, right? Wearing a tilak, wearing neck beads and having shika, dressing in clean cloth, chanting Gayatri, then chanting japa and Mangalarati, all the different aratis throughout the day, offering bhoga, taking prasadam. All of this is Pancharatra. And all of these activities are centered around the deity in the temple. So we follow this because it's purifying, because it helps us to come to the mode of goodness, helps us to become regulated, helps us to become clean, right? And therefore it's easier for us to come to a higher stage of chanting because we're living a more pure lifestyle and we're engaged full-time in different devotional activities that are also helping from all sides to purify us, to control the senses, to control the mind, right? Then it's beneficial. So anything that will help us in our chanting, we accept. Anything that is beneficial towards improving our kirtan and our japa, that's favorable. Anything unfavorable to these things, we reject. That's the principle. Chanting is the essence. Chanting is the most important form of the 9 forms of devotional service, kirtanam. Jiva Goswami explains that all of the other angas, all the other 8 forms of devotional service must assist in performance of kirtan, which is the yuga dharma, right? So therefore, we engage in deity worship as well. So, it's mentioned, there's a verse here that was quoted in the purport from the 12th canto. Whatever result one obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, one can also obtain in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So whatever was obtained in previous ages is contained in the chanting of the holy name. We should have faith in this principle. Nothing's left out. But then we may say, well, maybe I don't have full faith in this. I want to engage in these other processes as well to make sure all the bases are covered. But in the Padma Purana, there's a verse, I don't have it memorized, but it explains that actually we don't have the adhikar for any of these other activities in the age of Kali Yuga. We're not qualified for the intense yoga practice and meditation that was performed in Satya Yuga. They lived for 100,000 years, right? We only have, at best, 100 years to work with. So We see like the Prachetas and so many of these great souls, they engaged in meditation for 10,000 years, 60,000 years to attain perfection. But we don't have that kind of time. And our mind is not so easy to control. When Krishna instructed Arjuna in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita on this yoga practice, to come, yoga, the whole Ashtanga yoga system is to come to the stage of samadhi, which is just meditation, right? Beginning with dhyan, meditation. And Arjuna said, it's not possible. And that was in Dwapara Yuga. He said, it's not possible for me because the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. So we should not think that we are more qualified than Arjuna. If he rejected this process, then it's certainly not appropriate for us in this age. And yes, so, and yagyas, as far as the degree or the standard of yagyas that were performed in Treta Yuga, it requires such wealth and such opulence and such qualified Brahmins also to chant these mantras perfectly to get these desired results. But we don't find such qualified Brahmins in this age, nor do we find the opulence, so much wealth thrown into the fire. So who has this kind of fortune these days? Without the piety, you cannot have such prosperity. Then, deity worship as well. We should understand that, of course, in ISKCON, we do have the best standard of deity worship in the world. We can be proud of this fact. But even the standard of deity worship that we're offering in this age of Kali Yuga is nothing compared to the way that the Lord was worshipped in Dwapar Yuga. And everything is becoming contaminated. The ingredients even we offer in the worship, everything is becoming polluted in Kali Yuga, right? Not only, it's mentioned here, pollution entered into the dealings between devotees, which is a point we can go back to, which is mentioned in the translation here, that in Treta Yuga, disrespectful dealings between devotees began. But in Treta Yuga, all types of contamination entered. In the Ayurveda Shastra, Charak Samhita, it mentions that that's when disease began, and at the beginning of Treta Yuga, when the doshas became a little imbalanced, and it began with fever. And so the great sages assembled in the Himalaya, and they had a conference. We're seeing that disease is beginning, and it's disturbing the mind, it's disturbing our meditation. So what should we do? And the great sages came to the conclusion that Bharadwaj Muni should approach Indra, who learned from the 4 Kumaras, who are the original physicians, Ayurvedic physicians, and they heard from Brahma, the Ayurveda. And so then this is when Ayurveda was introduced. So even physically, this is when contamination began. And since that time, it's been downhill. And now we're at the bottom of that hill. I mean, we still have a way to go, 400,000 years left of this Kali Yuga, but we should understand it's not going to get better, right? So I think you had a question you were going to ask.
Somebody once had asked me this question. When we come to the temple, when we see deities, we just establish a connection. When we see their Vikara form, it just purifies us, makes us feel good. Whereas when it comes to chanting name,
Yes.
It shouldn't be compared with any Rasgulla or Gulab Jamun, but when we keep on chanting Rasgulla, 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 Gulab Jamun, Gulab Jamun, Gulab Jamun, does it really come in our mouth? Or do we really get it in real?
Yeah, well, if you're chanting a material name, you can chant Rasgulla, Rasgulla, you'll never get the taste of Rasgulla in your mouth. You can remember a previous experience of tasting a Rasgulla, that may come to mind, but you'll not actually experience it. Remembering something is not actually experiencing it, it's disconnected through time. But when you chant the name of Krishna, because Krishna and his name are non-different, then you can actually have a direct connection with Krishna. But as we said, there are degrees of chanting as well. Our ability to chant purely is hampered by our offensive mentality, our fruitive mentality. We may have material ambitions also, something in the back of the mind that we want to get out of it. right? Different things, contaminations are there in the heart, which prevent us from chanting very sincerely. But when one chants purely, then directly, one will get love of God in an instant if one chants in that way. And that's our goal. Yes? I think, is that okay? Yeah, because Krishna is transcendental. Whatever is transcendental is non-dual. Advaya Jnana Tattva Vastu Krishna Raswarup Brahma Atma Bhagavan Tin Tanra Rup. These three features of Krishna, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, they're all one. So Krishna is Advaya Jnana. Advaya Jnana means non-dual. So his name, form, qualities, pastimes, it's all Krishna. We don't make any distinction there. So, but material sound is different. The name Rasgula and the thing Rasgula, there's a duality there.
In the next verse, it says that Krishna is not satisfied with the worship done by Kanishnavi gardens. So my question is, why is deity worship recommended if Krishna is not going to be satisfied?
Because it's purifying us.
So although Krishna may not be satisfied with whatever we work.
Satisfied means he wants more.
Oh.
Not that he doesn't accept the worship, but he's not personally satisfied by this mood of reverence, and this is the beginning stage in deity worship. Even we're worshipping Radha Krishna, right? Radha Kirchor Gopinath. But we worship them in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, in reverence, right? We worship them as king and queen, like Dwaraka, right? And Prabhupada explained that's how we perform Archana, actually. It's like this temple is a palace, Krishna is the king, Radharani is the queen, and we worship them in that mood of great respect, right? But he's not satisfied with that. That's not what he personally desires. He explained that actually in the reason why he came to establish this Sankirtan movement. It goes back to the main purpose of this Yuga Dharma. There's a few, but there's an internal and external reason why Lord Chaitanya established the Sankirtan movement. One of them is because it's the Yuga Dharma, because we're so fallen that we are not qualified for the previous Yuga Dharmas, and we simply have to take shelter of the name, right, for our own salvation. So he came to propagate that Yuga Dharma. But at the same time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the combined form of Radha and Krishna, and he has a personal motive in establishing this Sankirtan movement, which is to distribute that Vraja Prema, love of Krishna and Vrindavan, that mood of basically Rupanuga Bhakti, right? We have two types of sadhana bhakti, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So Vaidhi bhakti means basically what we're doing in the temple by default, following this Pancharatric system, regulated devotional service. We have to wake up at a certain time. The curtains open at 4:30, whether you're there or not. And whoever's opening those curtains better be there. Right? The meals have to be on time. Noon, Raj Bhog has to be ready. So this is the Vaidhi path. This is rules and regulations. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to propagate Raganuga Bhakti, which is spontaneous devotional service, where we actually have the feeling behind it. And sometimes there's a misunderstanding that Raganuga means throwing away all the rules and regulations. Spontaneous means we do whatever we want, right, for Krishna. But that's not spontaneous, that's whimsical. We don't want whimsical devotional service. Because even in Vrindavan, in the spiritual realm, there's regulation, right? Krishna's meals are on time. Krishna's woken up by Mother Yashoda at the same time in the morning. He takes the cows out for grazing at the same time every day, brings them back at the same time in the evening. Everything is regulated there. It's not just like, One day he's bringing cows, next day Nanda Maharaj says, let's go herd the chickens instead. Or, he's having his, typical meal that Mother Yashoda is cooking for him with the assistance of Radharani, rice, dal, sabji, chapati, etc. And then one day they're like, let's do Italian today, It's regulated, so there's no problem with regulation. So what's the difference between Raganuga and Vaidhi? The difference is that the form is the same, the activities are the same, but one is done because of obligation, the other one's done because of, pure love. That's the difference. So we have to begin with Vaidhi sadhana. We begin with rules and regulations, and that's what deity worship is there for, to really help us become regulated and clean, hygienic, pure. And we have to fill those actions with love. Right? Not we change the activities, but eventually you wake up in the morning, not because your spiritual master told you to, because you took a vow to chant 16 rounds and you have to do that, otherwise it's Guru Avagya, no offense to the spiritual master, and that's bad. Right? Therefore we have to wake up early, even though I'd rather sleep in, and that's the reason we're doing it. Right? Eventually, you wake up in the morning because you're excited to go see Krishna, and because you're excited to chant the holy name, because that's what you live for, right? And this Raganuga Bhakti is following, Rag Anuga. Anuga means following, so following Rag. What is Rag? Rag means attachment. We're following the Ragatmik devotees in Vrindavan who are serving Krishna eternally. Mother Yashoda, Srimati Radharani, the cowherd boys like Subal. These are eternal associates of the Lord who have what's called Ragatmik Bhakti. Ragatmik means that rag that they have, that attachment for Krishna is their Atma, is their very self. That's just who they are. They love Krishna. And Raganuga is following those eternal associates. If we want to know what it looks like to serve Krishna 24/7, we look at the eternal associates, what they're doing. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If we want to know how to please the Lord, we learn from following in the footsteps of the great devotees. And therefore we are das, anudas, anudas, anudas. We're following the eternal associates. So I hope that that was long-winded, but we began answering your question there. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So he accepts the worship of neophyte devotees who are simply fixated on the deity and rules, and they don't see God outside of the temple. They don't see God in the heart of all living entities. They just see God is in the deity. So they come to the temple, they worship the deity. But outside, maybe they don't see God, or they don't think about God. They know God is there in that place. I have to go there, and I can see God. And then the Mayavadis say, well, God is everywhere, why we should go? And they actually don't go to the temple. And then Prabhupada said, if God is everywhere, you also come to the temple and worship the deity. But no, God is everywhere except for the deity. Different perspective. So we begin there, but we understand that Krishna wants the love. It's not that he wants that chapati on your plate that you're offering, he wants that sabji that you cook so well. In fact, we find the sabji is still there when we take the plate back, right? Because he took the love, he took the bhakti.
So when we offer bhoga for Krishna, what he's really trying to take from us, not take, but what he really seeks is the love behind it, not
Yes.
necessarily the preparation.
Yes, it's the relationship. It's the relationship he wants.
It's the relationship.
Yeah, so that's why whatever we're doing, we just have to be sincere, right? Yes, Prabhu?
So Prabhu, on multiple occasions, Prabhupada has emphasized on the worship of God Nitai for householders,
Yes.
for Rastas.
Yes?
And so just, I'm trying to reconcile because you said we are following the worship of Lakshmi Narayan in the temple.
Well, I said when we're worshipping Radha Krishna, we're worshipping in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan.
Lakshmi Narayan. So,
Because we don't have this Vraja Bhakti, Radha Krishna, they only accept this pure Braj Prema, you know. It's so Lakshmi Narayan, it's Vaidhi. Yeah.
So is it that God Nitai are more merciful than
Indeed, they are.
they
Yes.
accept whatever
They don't accept our offenses,
mhm.
right? They just see the good in what we're doing. So even if one is not initiated, you can worship Gaura Nitai,
Mhm.
right? Jagai and Madhai, they were accepted. So generally we begin with worshiping Gaura Nitai. In fact, it's sufficient just to worship Gaura Nitai and nothing else. We have sometimes an obsession with I need every single deity, you know, I need the whole collection. But it's sufficient to worship Gaura Nitai. You know, the more we accumulate, the more personalities there, the more likely we may make some mistakes. Right? Keep it simple. Gaura Nitai. Yeah, this is actually our process. We only approach Krishna through Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, even when we offer arati, we begin with our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, the Parampara. We are asking their permission to approach the Lord, right? Then we worship Lord Chaitanya first. And through Lord Chaitanya, then we can approach Krishna. But we cannot go directly to Krishna. We go through Lord Chaitanya, because who is Lord Chaitanya? He is the combined form of Radha and Krishna. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in Navadvip Bhavataranga, a book he wrote about the glories of Navadvip Dham, and where Jiva Goswami is taken on parikram around Navadvip by Nityananda Prabhu. And there he explains that we begin our journey, our spiritual life, by cultivating dasya bhav with Lord Chaitanya, right? They have the different rasas, Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. So we have to begin with Dasya. That's why in the temple we're learning this process of Dasyam, how to be a servant, right? How to worship in the mood of master and servant. And who is our master? It's Lord Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu. He is the master. So we have to cultivate this mood of reverence to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya, we don't have Madhurya Rasa, all of these things. It's not. There are apasampradayas, you know, deviant Vaishnav groups, such as the Gauranga Nagaris. You know, they speculated some ideas that, you know, we can worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his wife Vishnu Priya Devi as in conjugal rasa, and all of his associates are like gopis, and they have these speculations, but these are offensive, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur preached against them. So there are 13 major apasampradayas that are identified, and one of them is this philosophy that we can worship Chaitanya in Madhurya Rasa, but this is not accepted by our acharyas. So we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the mood of servant, you know, menial servant, just as all of his associates did. And when we get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, then eventually the combined form of Radha and Krishna, which is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, splits to Radha Krishna, and we can enter Vrindavan and enter higher rasas if that's our aspiration. But it's only through Lord Chaitanya, by getting his mercy in this age especially. Yes, bro.
Sometimes at home, when it's my turn to do service, like for the deities, I do it with a very bad attitude. Like it's not something that I necessarily enjoy very much.
Mm-hmm.
So then, what
You
do
throw the plate here, Krishna. You take that.
It's not like that. But I'm not very
I don't think you do it with a bad attitude, but sometimes we're more inspired and sometimes less. But that's what Vaidhi means. Duty bound. Right? Like if you have a child, the deity is like your child in a sense. And if you have a child, it's not that one day you wake up and you're like, don't feel like, you know, cooking, and so yeah, I won't do an offering today. It's not gonna. Then someone's gonna come and take your child away. So, but no one's gonna come and take your deities away, unfortunately. So we can go on like that, but really we have to commit to them just like we would commit to our own children. Yeah, that means we're duty bound. Even if we don't feel like it, we still do it, just like our japa, right? We don't take a vow at initiation to do a certain amount of deity worship or anything like that. We take a vow for 16 rounds, and we meet that because we're duty bound, right? So if you're not going to keep that standard, then why have deities, right? Better to have pictures. Yeah, everyone can have pictures. Pictures, if you don't do an offering one day, no problem, you know? Because there's a different level of consideration between pictures and the actual Archa Vigraha, the form of the Lord. So both of them, they're non-different, yes. Pictures are considered one of the deity forms. There are different forms you can make out of clay, out of metal, in the mind, out of wood, and out of, paint. These are accepted. So when you worship an image, benefit is the same. Benefit will be the same if you worship a picture or a deity, actually. But if you have a deity, in the 11th canto, Krishna explains to Uddhava what he likes in his deity form. He likes bathing, abhishek. This is actually the specialness of having a deity, that you can perform bathing, right? And if you're not going to do that, then might as well keep a picture, right? The benefit of having a deity is that they're three-dimensional, and you can offer more services. You can do more things with a deity. You can polish them, bathe them, dress them, right? So it's more limited with an image, but yes.
I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I heard a devotee say that if you commit offense while doing deity worship, the only way of prayaschitta for committing offense is to keep on chanting.
Yes, yeah. Chant the holy name. Yeah. In fact, the primary way we worship the deity in Kali Yuga is by chanting the holy name. So we notice in the temple, all of the deity worship, all of the aratis are accompanied by Harinam. It's actually the kirtan that is the worship of the deity, right? Everything else is for our purification, for our benefit, But those who watch those who watch the performance of Abhishek or the performance of Arati, and those who perform the Abhishek or the Arati both get the exact same benefit. Yes. By observing it and by performing it, benefit is the same. So sometimes we feel bad that, I want to be up there, I want to participate in the Abhishek. But there's a reason that there are curtains and that the curtains open and people are welcome to come in and observe, right? Because you get benefit by observing these ceremonies. So, yeah, from all angles, it's auspicious. It's purifying, right? But the kirtan is what's pleasing to the deities. And the bell, when we ring the bell, the bell symbolizes the totality of all sound vibration. It includes kirtan. So this is why even if no kirtan is going on, which there should be, but the bell will always be rung, right? Because there always has to be some kirtan happening, some sound vibration. So it represents this. Yeah. So there's always got to be kirtan accompanying deity worship. Anyway, any other questions? Yes, Prabhu?
So Prabhu, you mentioned that in ISKCON we worship Radha Krishna as Lakshmi Narayan.
In the mood of Lakshmi
In the
Narayan.
mode of Lakshmi Narayan.
Yeah.
But we are told, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also said, and Prabhupada also said, we should always focus, meditate on Shyam Sundar form,
Yes.
not on the 400.
Yes.
So does it contradict?
No, there's no contradiction. Because, right now, do you have a relationship with Shyam Sundar? You do. Yes. Yes?